So this is actually fairly significant here. I mean, of course it is because it's in the Bible, but I mean, for your understanding and context. Okay, so Jesus is rejected in Nazareth, is what we're going to read about. And verse 16 says this. He, of course, Jesus, went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. Okay? So Jesus is going into the synagogue. Now listen to me, look at me. Not that synagogue. That's it, that's important. That synagogue was built by Jewish followers of Jesus to commemorate where the announcement was made to Mary. Everybody understand? This synagogue was the town synagogue as Jesus grew up here. It's the place that, it's a synagogue. You know the church that you grew up in? This was the synagogue that Jesus grew up in. He knew all the people. Hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you for a long time. You know, that kind of thing.
Has that one been found?
Okay, so now the question is where is it? We're in the village, and really we're kind of on this southern end of the village. That the rest of the village goes towards the north and towards the spring. How big this village is? There's only parts of this village of Nazareth that have been excavated. If you would think about over the years who's going to excavate in Nazareth, where do you think the concentration of excavation is going to take place?
Right here.
Right here. As far as a Jewish state of Israel, do you think that the Israel Antiquity Authority is going to be very interested in Nazareth for purely Jewish history?
Can anything good come out of Nazareth?
Yeah, can anything good come out of Nazareth? But you can see why there hasn't been an emphasis on just from the Jews themselves understanding the Jewish Nazareth. There's so many other more important places in the country from that standpoint to dig. Does that make sense? So that's why there hasn't been as much digging here as from that standpoint. But as you walk towards the spring, there is a Muslim cemetery, and in this, well, I think it is Muslim. Is it Muslim or is it? Yeah, it's a Muslim cemetery, and in that cemetery are pillars from the Roman period, from the time of Jesus, that are just laying in there. It hasn't been excavated. Of course, you can't excavate it because it's a Muslim cemetery. Okay, but that is where it is believed that the here, let me put it like this.
That's your fault, Vicky.
I always know my every time I look at her, she's going. And this time it was. Okay, so in that Muslim cemetery, these pillars can't excavate, but that's where it's believed the synagogue was, because those pillars are there, and those are the type of pillars that you find in a monumental building like a synagogue. Okay, the village would be small. The most monumental building in the village of Nazareth would be the synagogue. Okay, so think over there a little ways for this story. He went to Nazareth, verse 16, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written. And by the way, we're going to be at Qumran on this trip. Okay, the most famous scroll of the Dead Sea Scrolls is called the Great Isaiah Scroll, where it's an almost complete copy of the scroll of Isaiah that dates to 125 to 150 BC. What does BC stand for?
Before coming in. Before
Okay,
Christ.
so keep in mind the Great Isaiah Scroll found in the Dead Sea Scrolls is older than this story.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's true.
Okay? We're not just talking a book of history. It is a book of history. We're talking authority.
Yes.
Okay? Because it's telling us what's going to happen. In this case, for example, in the book of Isaiah, prophet Isaiah, before then it happens.
We're gonna visit Israel Museum, yes.
Yeah.
So he's gonna see.
And man can't do that. Can't see the future. No man knows the future. Only God knows the future. So when we're being told the future accurately, that's God speaking to us. This is God speaking to us.
I like it.
And so, verse 17, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom from the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. He began by saying to them, "Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." That's authority. Not this guy waving to us from these posters, right, on the highway. And it is laughable, but think about that. I'm not even saying it as a joke. That's the competition. Here with the Messiah, we have all that he would fulfill told before he then fulfills each one of them. It's obvious when you look back in history who the Messiah is. It's so obvious.
That's good, bro.
And any competition that comes later that doesn't have any of this, this guy Sneerson, he wasn't crucified. He wasn't pierced through his hands and his feet. He wasn't laid in a rich man's tomb. He never even made it to Israel. He's from Brooklyn. Starts with a B, but that doesn't count. I mean, seriously, it is laughable, but what it can help us understand is how powerful and how solid the case for Christ is.
Amen.
And this is an example of that. He came not to abolish everything that was written about him, but to fulfill it.
Yeah.
Amen.
Praise the Lord.